What's good, everyone? It's Zigzag here. Welcome back to another Geoguessr video. Good to have you along on the channel today. So today we're going to be playing some Community World on a play along, and the idea is that you're going to play these seeds first, and then I'm going to teach you guys what I know about the different metas that we're going to see in these rounds and all the different tips and tricks that you can use to up your level of gameplay. I hope by watching this video you'll at least learn some things. Hopefully in every location I'll be able to teach you at least 2 or 3. So let's get straight into this first link, which is found in the description. Hopefully you've played it by now, and let's see what we got going on. I've also blurred out the car so that we are not using that to decide where we're going to go, because a lot of people like to learn the actual tips rather than just the car meta. Here's the first one. This architecture strikes me as quite Southeast Asian off the bat. Also, we have a whole bunch of motorbikes. Motorbikes are fairly common in Latin America as well, but certainly the part of the world where you see them the most is Southeast Asia, particularly you could say like Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, that kind of area there. Okay, so we see plenty of those scooters and bikes right now. So let's take a look around here. We've got a mix of like what appears to be Arabic and also what appears to be some kind of Latin script language as well here, which is interesting indeed. This girl is wearing a headscarf as well, so that will definitely factor into our guess later down the track. Okay, so just looking for anything. We also have a flag here, so that will probably help as well at some point. Okay, so we're fairly built up here, which is interesting. Again, we have the flag painted on the poles here. So this will be Indonesia, and Indonesia is a very patriotic country, so you'll often see that around the spot here. Okay, so let's take one more look. Okay, here's a very important thing to know for Indonesia, is that oftentimes they'll have cigarette ads all around the place, and the price is normally around 15,000. I think it's rupees over there, so I'm pretty sure that's what you use in, it starts with an R, I think it starts with an R anyway, and it's normally going to be about 15,000, somewhere in that ballpark. 16,000 is also pretty common for the price of cigarettes, so you can often use that as a pretty good way to tell Indonesia, because that's the only country using that currency. So yeah, we also have this kind of very Indo/Malay looking language here, so yeah, obviously that is going to be pretty nice. The question is where. It kind of reminded me of Borneo a little bit. It also kind of reminded me of Sulawesi, so I'm kind of tossing up between those two, seeing if there's any. I know the phone codes for Indonesia, but I don't think we're actually going to get any proper here. So yeah, and then polls are also quite useful, but I don't think we see any as well. So then, actually, the longer I look at it, the more I kind of like just going Java here. I could easily see Sulawesi or any island here, but I think I will just go for Java. So let's find out where it actually is, and it ends up being all the way up here. So well done if you were able to get Sumatra. Unfortunately, because it was so urban, I couldn't get it, although I'm sure if you're an Indonesia expert, you could have. So starting off with a low score, but hopefully you learned some stuff about Indonesia. And here we are, and this one would appear to be in a similar type of region of the world, let's say. Okay, so let's take a look at what we see on this one. We see all white road lines. This is going to be very significant for helping us decide where to go. We also have black and white signposts, which will also help factor in for the country here. It's quite apparent that we are driving left-hand side of the road here, even though this whole like pulling over section over here, this car is driving on the left-hand side of the road, and you can see this sign is set up for left-hand drive. This is the back of the sign. The cars with their headlights facing us here will drive down the road, and they'll be able to see this sign facing towards them. Okay, so that's pretty useful. Vegetation-wise, we also have a whole bunch of oil palms here. Oil palms, very common in Indonesia, particularly Borneo, and likewise maybe even more common in Malaysia. Also common in southern Thailand as well. I'm pretty sure that's the extent of where they're very commonly found, so good to keep that in mind. Okay, and then we also have a black number plate, which is divided in 2 here. We have one set of text here, one set of text here, wide black number plate. If this were in Indonesia, which it's not, then we would have 3 sets of text. As it stands, we only have 2, and so that would indicate that we are in Malaysia. Okay, so yeah, all white road lines as well, very Malaysian, and oftentimes you'll have a double white line in the center. Double white line, but we don't have that here. If you do have that and you're in Asia, I'm pretty sure Malaysia is the only country in Asia that uses double whites, at least the only country that commonly does it. So yeah, we should be on Borneo here, and the reason I say that is because we're in generation 3 camera, which is more common in Borneo. And we also have all these oil palms, which are also more common in Borneo, and it's very flat as well, whereas Peninsular Malaysia tends to be quite hilly all the way through. So I would say we're somewhere around here maybe, Just trying to think actually how far up I want to go here. Maybe it could be somewhere around here. It's probably going to be somewhere between here and over here, and so I'm just going to go for that. And it ends up being 200 kilometers away, other side of Bintulu, so not a bad effort there. Although, no doubt, as well, some of you guys got better scores. Okay. On to the next round here. Let's check out what we got going on. Okay, so we have some language here. We'll return to that at some point soon. Okay, so we have holy poles over here. That's definitely going to factor into our decision later on. You'd call this one a wide holy pole, and there are 3 countries in Europe that tend to use holy poles very often, and those are Hungary, Romania, and Poland. You can also find holy poles of some description in France and Belgium, and then also occasionally in Portugal, although Portuguese ones look a bit different, and then elsewhere in Eastern Europe as well. Okay, so that's kind of what we're working with here. Okay, we are fairly hilly, but not all too hilly. One also thing to mention about this holy pole here is that it's painted white at the bottom, which will also factor into our decision later on as well. Okay, so we have some bollards here. These are in the Australian style. This is an Australian style bollard, although a bit shorter. So you'd find this kind of a bollard in the Netherlands as well, although of course we're not there because with mountains like this, these would easily exceed the highest point in the Netherlands. Okay, and then we also have some architecture here, which will come in useful. Architecture is kind of the thing you need to get like your own feel for by playing a lot, but I would definitely say that that's useful here. And also the white center lines should guarantee that we're in Europe as opposed to elsewhere. Okay, so I'm coming to my decision here. Given the fact that a lot of the trees are painted white at the bottom, as well as this wide holy pole here, I think this should be in Romania. So let's take a look at this sign here to confirm that we're speaking some kind of Romance language. And we are. We can see the DE kind of word here. That would definitely remind me of a Romance language, such as like Italian or French or something like that. But of course, we're in Eastern Europe, so this one will be Romania. This architecture here kind of reminded me more of like Hungary or Slovakia or Serbia, so I was thinking of guessing this side of the country. Who knows if that's going to be correct or not. That's kind of my own thinking on the round though. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, these bollards, these are not typical for Romania, although you can find them there. So I think that's about all we need to mention here. Let's guess it. And it ends up being 155 kilometers away, so a pretty nice effort there. Okay, next one here. Seems that we are continuing on with the theme of the first 2 rounds from this video. So here we are using a concrete road. This is probably the biggest clue on a round like this. Concrete roads around the world, fairly common in Philippines, in Thailand. You can find concrete roads fairly often in like Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia as well. Bolivia, I believe, every now and again uses some concrete roads as well. I'm just trying to think of other countries where concrete roads are fairly prevalent. But yeah, these ones in Southeast Asia are particularly where you'll see a lot of them. And now in Thailand, you wouldn't see so many concrete roads that are, well, Indonesia, I forgot to mention as well. Thailand, you wouldn't see so many concrete roads that are double laned, whereas in Philippines, you would see them quite often. So Philippines immediately coming to mind here. Okay, so we have some like banana plants here, very common all over Southeast Asia, that's for sure. We also have these red and white chevrons here. Now, I can't claim to know my chevrons of Asia that well. I know them pretty much all in Europe. But as for these chevrons, you can definitely see red and white in Philippines, and it's quite useful. I think you can also see red and white in Sri Lanka, and probably some others as well, although I think all the other like proper possibilities would not be a factor with red and white, I believe. Also, clearly, we're driving right-hand side of the road, and so that cuts out Thailand, Cambodia, Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia. Oh, not Cambodia, sorry, but, you know. And so, yeah, plenty of countries that drive left-hand side of the road. Okay, so all that having been said, we seem to be quite high up here, and so the tallest mountains in in Philippines, I would say somewhere up here. So that's really where I'm thinking of guessing, although it could just be a really wet day, and that's why it looks so elevated. And so, is there anything else to say here? We also have a bit of English, which is very typical to see in the Philippines, and we do probably have the location of where we are here, but I can't be bothered actually pinpointing on a teaching video. Well, all white road lines is interesting as well, because sometimes you would see yellows in Philippines. Unfortunately, this was all the way far south. It's interesting because I seem to be able to get the middle of the country quite well, but then I often confuse north and south with one another. So, unfortunate result there, but we do fine. Okay, so the next one here, we are on 4 country streak. Let's see if we can continue on that theme. This one, we're immediately going to look at the road lines. Obviously, I'm always harping on about road lines in this series, but I really do think it's so important that you learn where we'll have yellow in the center and where we'll have white in the center. And so we appear to have double yellow lines in the center here, which would mean somewhere in the Americas is immediately much more likely. So the only country where you would never see like double yellow lines like this is like Chile, where you'd have double white lines. And then some of these countries like Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Mexico are more likely to use a single yellow line in the center, but still, you'll be able to find double yellows as well. Okay, let's take a look at the poles next. These poles are sectioned. They have 3 sections in them. They have dots towards the top, and they're completely made of concrete. So perhaps that rings a bell for you. If it does, then you should know the country. If it doesn't, then keep the image of this pole in your mind, because it is one of the more useful poles to know in the whole Geoguessr, I would say. And so we have red roofs on a lot of the buildings as well. This would probably indicate some European influence, I think it's fair to say. We also have a lot of motorbikes. As I said, motorbikes can be found quite often in South America. This one does not really feel like Southeast Asia. In fact, the only countries you'd see double yellows in Southeast Asia would be like Taiwan. Just trying to think. I think maybe sometimes in Cambodia you'd see it, or maybe sometimes in Thailand as well. But yeah, not particularly common thing to see in Southeast Asia. Okay, so I am thinking with these concrete section poles that we should be somewhere in Brazil. Now, Brazil uses these poles all around the country. You can see fairly similar ones with shorter sections in them in Ecuador, and then Brazil is a pretty good call when you see a pole like this in South America. Also, to mention, we have these clear satellite dishes, very common for roofs of Brazilian houses. And so the question is where, and with these hills, I am kind of liking north. A lot of red roofs and kind of this shaped hills in the north of the country. I could as easily see it being somewhere like much further out here. I could also see it being, somewhere in Goiás or Tocantins as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we should be correct here. And so I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that's particularly useful. A lot of motorbikes, and I think that may indicate that we're in a poorer area, and this is kind of a poorer area as opposed to the deep south, which is quite a bit more wealthy in Brazil. But I think that's about all I can see. The double yellows in the center, those concrete poles here, and kind of this just general landscape and feel is quite Brazilian indeed. So let's see if I'm right about where it is, and it ends up being a nice guess in Ceará. So I don't really know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but there we go, an 18,000. So by no means a terrifically high score, especially because my Philippines guess left a lot to be desired, but I think that was a good one. So let's head into the second challenge link now and hope for another seed where we can just run through some of the more important things here. So yeah, let's get that one. Click that in the description, play it before you move on to this one, and let's see how we go. Okay, here, so first one here is immediately giving me a certain vibe. So we should be in Generation 2 camera here. Now, Generation 2 camera is the coverage taken about a decade and a few years ago, 12, 13 years ago. And yeah, about that long ago almost. And we should be in somewhere in Western Europe for that reason. Eastern Europe did not get much Generation 2 coverage. There's not too much Generation 2 in the United States, interestingly, although Mexico and Canada have quite a bit of it. South America is largely devoid of Generation 2, apart from a little bit in Brazil and maybe Colombia as well, I think. And yeah, and then Australia and New Zealand have it, but this is a European style sign here. And yeah, I mean, actually, you may be able to see a similar sign in New Zealand, but regardless, I'm pretty sure with this climate we shouldn't be there. Okay, and then South Africa also has Gen 2 as well. So, yeah, let's check out what we got going on here. Seems like some oak trees or something like that. A lot of fruit bushes as well. This is the first round of the video where I'm not entirely sure of the country, although I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to get there. I hope anyway. Okay, so we do have a mountain or a volcano over there, which is really interesting. We have another red tiled roof. We also have an olive tree here or something. Regardless, it might not be an olive tree, but it's very Mediterranean looking. So I'd immediately start thinking about those types of countries. Anyway, Portugal all the way through to Greece here. Greece is another country that has a lot of Generation 2 camera. These poles here do appear to have the color of being concrete, especially this one here, I would say. And Greece tends to use wooden poles. So we can probably cut Greece out here, at least tentatively. So we're on a fairly, it feels like a warm climate, I would say. It definitely does not feel too cold. And with this, this concrete pole does feel round to me. And so I'm thinking Italy. And now let me let you know of the thing that most makes me think of Italy, which is this kind of dark back to this sign. And now, dark backs to signs can be found in many countries in Europe, but it's especially prevalent in Italy, Albania, and Romania. They're the 3 countries where you can reliably have it. Now, North Macedonia, I mean, I've seen fairly grey-looking ones in Poland just today, and in many other places, but generally speaking, when you have a darker back of the sign like this, Italy is a good shout. And of the countries that we mentioned, Romania has extremely rare Gen 2, and North Macedonia has no Generation 2, so Italy is the go, right? Okay, so fairly mountainous over this direction. I don't have the compass enabled because that's what the car script gets rid of. I think it's actually Shift K. We can bring back the compass here. Okay, so like the kind of mountain or volcano to our south, and then over to our east, we also have some mountain range as well. So I'm just going to guess kind of somewhere over here, but I dare say that we are going to be somewhere in like central southern Italy here. So let's see. And it ends up being a nice guess right near Rome there. So we will take that. Okay, so hopefully that black back of the sign helped you guys out there. Next one, we're on a bridge. So this one may prove a little bit more of a challenge. Okay, so next one. So we have a single yellow line in the center of the road. Single yellow lines. Okay, so quite commonly found in Thailand, Cambodia, and Indonesia, I would say. Let's take a look at where this car was driving. So this car was driving right-hand side of the road, so we can actually eliminate all but Cambodia there. Okay, moving over to South America, I already mentioned earlier in the video that you often see a single yellow line in Bolivia, Peru. Actually, I'm not sure how common it is in Bolivia. Maybe Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Guatemala, Mexico. Okay, and I am thinking that this truck here, this pickup truck, kind of looks more like one that would be made in the United States. And when you see a truck like that, then Mexico and Guatemala have got to come to mind. You often see quite a lot in Ecuador a lot as well, in my experience. But I definitely think that when you see a truck like that, Mexico and Guat have got to come to mind for you. Also, this might be an American car as well, come to think of it. As for architecture here, there's not too much going on. It's very lush, it's very green. So a lot of Mexico is surprisingly dry, and so we can definitely chop off maybe the first half of Mexico here, and so that's probably not a possibility. Also, the sun here is to the south, so that would indicate northern hemisphere, most likely. I mean, it's not directly to the south, but it's definitely more so to the south, so I would feel fairly confident using that hint here. Okay, so because we can't see the Google car, generally speaking, when you can see the Google car, you can see the silver car with the rear view mirrors, which would probably be visible here if we are in Guatemala, which I have a feeling we might be. If you're not using the Google car meta, and it can be quite difficult to distinguish the 2 countries. But essentially, we've got a fairly mountainous landscape here, and we are fairly tropical, and we have this single yellow line, as I said, both countries use. I would be leaning towards Guat here, but I could certainly see a southern Mexico, even something along the coasts here, either side where it's a bit greener, is also certainly possible. And we have a political poster here. I feel like both countries, you do see them, and but I'm relatively confident that it is North America here. So we may lose our 6-country streak here, it's possible, but I will go for Guatemala. Let's see if we're correct about that. And so it was Guatemala, just on the Mexican border. This is kind of the region I expected it to be in. And so we end up surviving yet again. And so we are sitting on a 7-country streak here, going quite nicely. Okay, the next one here, plenty of clues, but let's try and break it down here for ourselves. Okay, so first things to notice, road lines. Always look down for the road lines first. We are using all white road lines here, including a double white in the center. And that is going to be very useful indeed. In fact, will be one of the deciding factors in our guess here. We're driving right-hand side of the road, so assuming that we are, in Europe, which, I mean, the architecture looks very European indeed, I think it's fair to say, then we should not be in United Kingdom, Ireland, Malta, and Cyprus as well, although there's no coverage there. Okay, so that is they're the places that drive left. So we've got a blue strip on the plate as well, so probably not Russia, probably not Ukraine, generally speaking, 2 countries that don't use blue strips on the plate. And so then we are kind of thinking about, mainland continental standard Europe here. Okay, so let's break down some of the things that we could use to get the country here. And I'll reveal to you that the country is Poland. Okay, so why is it Poland? We have this concrete pole here with the kind of oval holes in it here, and these ones are the Polish variants where they don't go all the way to the ground, whereas in for example, Hungary and Romania, normally the holes would go all the way down into the ground, whereas on this one they cut off before the end and before the top, so that is quite a Polish pole indeed. We also have double whites in the center of the road here, and for whatever reason, on many roads around Europe, you'll find double whites, don't get me wrong, but on a thinner road like this, where it's kind of like, it's quite suburban, like why would you really have a double white line here, generally speaking, which means no overtaking? Well, you have one here, and you have those quite often on thinner roads in Poland. I think Denmark is another country that has a very has a penchant for these double white lines. Where else do I often see them? Greece often has them, and they're often faded in Greece as well. So that's 3 countries where you often see them, where you might not expect to see them in other countries, okay? Of course, you do see them in other countries, but in zones where you might not see them in other countries. Okay, I can also think of 2 other things for Poland here. Here's a pedestrian crossing, and here you don't have any stripes on it. In Poland, you won't have any stripes on the pedestrian crossing signs, so that's quite useful indeed as well. And then looking over at this house here, very typical Polish house, bright red roof, but what's more important is the dormer here inside the roof, which is kind of like an extra room in like the attic or whatever you want to say. And so that is quite a common feature in Polish architecture. What else can we say here? It's quite flat as well. Poland is a relatively flat country, at least in the interior of it. And yeah, okay. And these trees also quite fairly northern feeling as well. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go here. I probably just click in the center of the country for around like this. So I think that's what I'll do. Maybe a little bit further south. Let's go there. Okay. And so we should be close here. Ends up being all the way down south near Katowice, and actually the mountains are not too far away from there. So I misjudged it a little bit, but that's fine. Okay, next one here. Oh, this one's interesting. Very red soil. We have not had many soil-dependent rounds just yet, as we've been playing today, but this one has very red soil. And so countries where you can see red soil around the world. Brazil is the stereotypical red soil country. And it's funny because the rest of the South American countries, minus parts of Uruguay and Argentina in the panhandle here, do not really have too much red soil at all. So Brazil really confines it in its own borders. Obviously, you can find some in Kenya and Uganda. They're 2 countries that are quite known for having red soil as well. Australia, Cambodia, Thailand, they're all countries that have red soil as well. Maybe sometimes South Africa has reddish soil, kind of orangish soil. Sometimes in the US of A as well, like Alabama, Mississippi area can have some red soil. So that's where I'd say even parts of Canada as well, maybe. But yeah, red soil like this, I'm thinking of Brazil. So other things that make me think of South America here are these kind of wooden fences with like a wood like that. Fairly typical of Brazil, and obviously we are not using any script here, so a lot of time people confuse Cambodia for Brazil, but of course if you have any like Latin script, then Brazil should be fairly safe to send, as opposed to Cambodia, which normally uses the Khmer script or whatever it's called. Okay, so this one's a kind of a rolling landscape. I've just been practicing my Brazil recently, but I'm still not entirely sure. I kind of like Tocantins here, but I could also see something like the really dry part of Acre or Rondônia, maybe Rondônia or Mato Grosso do Sul, or Mato Grosso, no, more Mato Grosso maybe. So somewhere along this band here, I kind of expect it to be. What else I have to say? Dirt road coverage, not too common in Brazil, but certainly seeable. And yeah, it's kind of like Brazil's kind of a country that has like hills all around the spot and then mountains along the coast. So let's go for Tocantins here. Ends up being Goiás, so not the greatest guess ever, but only one state over, to be fair. So 3,000 there. Brazil's tough. Brazil is tough. Okay, this is a fun one. So where are you guys thinking here? This one, I imagine many people will have gotten, but at the same time, it could trip you up if you're not used to seeing this country, because it is relatively rare to see in Geoguessr. But okay, so we appear to be driving left-hand side of the road here. You can particularly see that from this guy, although he is kind of driving more so on the center of the road. So if you didn't pick that up, I could certainly forgive you for that. We also have a black and white curb here, and for whatever reason, I have no idea what the reason is, but like black and white curbs painted like that seem to be much more common in second and third world countries. Only first world countries I can think of where you could really see a black and white curb often would be like Israel. You see it quite a bit, but yeah, most times when you see something like that, you're going to be in a poorer country. Obviously, you can see that from the kind of infrastructure here anyway, but you know, it's worth bearing in mind, I think. especially if you're playing NMPZ or something like that. Okay, so we have like a lot of pine trees here or something like that, which is certainly interesting. And the big one here is actually going to be the architecture. So let's take a look at these houses. We have like intricate patterns on this one. It's very, very cool looking house. And these ones here, I would say, are the kind of typical ones. Very Asian looking roofs here, I think it's fair to say, kind of flat and wide. And then, and they also have like kind of wooden panels and then also these white panels as well. I think that's the really unique thing about this country's houses. And so I do believe we are going to be somewhere in Bhutan here. Now, I just don't think you can really see any kind of houses that look like this outside of Bhutan. Like, it really is just the Bhutanese. Maybe if you're in Nepal or something, but Nepal has very limited trekker coverage, whereas Bhutan actually has some street view. So now, if you see these, then these types of houses, lots of windows as well, then it should be Bhutan. And obviously, the landscape fits here as well. Now, I'm not sure where this one's going to be. The mountains are not the tallest, so I was thinking of like some valley like that, something like this. It also feels a little drier, but I'm actually not too sure. Regardless, left-hand drive, also British influence inside Bhutan. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good here. Let's send in. This one will be correct. It ends up being just near the capital city, Thimphu, or over here near the airport. Okay, that makes sense with the fence. So well done if you got that, because that was probably pretty gettable. So we get 20,000 that time, a 10-country streak, which is pretty good. I say we'll probably end off the video there, guys. If you want to see more of these coaching videos, then definitely hit this like button, hit that like button rather, and let me know in the comments, because I'm always down to do more of these. I like teaching, so just let me know. And yeah, I hope this one was useful to you guys. Had a nice balance, particularly Asian focused this time. But I hope that I gave you some good hints on this one. And yeah, I'll see you guys in a video very soon. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.